ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply. Today we're getting an update on the poison dart frog Vivarium. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes, and today we're going ReefDudes style and doing an update on the dart frog Vivarium. It's been a while, it's been growing like a jungle, so let's get to it. Now, if you guys remember my original videos, I did start this spring, so it's not quite a year old, but it's getting up there and things have really started growing well. It is turning to a little jungle inside, which I am absolutely starting to love. You can see the little poison dart frogs have been doing very, very well. In fact, they have been breeding, and I have a bunch of little tadpoles. We'll get to that one in a few. But if we open the doors and look inside, you can kind of see the little frogs are doing quite well, and they are pretty bold. Like, almost every time I look over at the tank, I always see a handful of frogs. So even right now I can see at least 3, but on average I'd say probably see about 4 of them. But overall I'd say these are extremely easy pets. I mean, at least compared to a reef tank, they're very, very low maintenance. The tank is automatically misted, it keeps the humidity, and all I really do is feed them flightless fruit flies. So super duper duper easy. And a lot of people always kind of ask that, how hard are they? How much effort is it? And I'm gonna say honestly, next to none. My little palm tree's growing like crazy. This thing has been taken over. As you can see, this needs a trim. Like, there is so many things in here that are just cluttering up this area. Now, I did mention tadpoles, and those are some guys that I'm going to set up a little temporary tank for. So I think I'm gonna do a big trim later, and probably in the next week or two, and I'll put all the plants in the temporary bin. It'll be a bit of a frog slash plant grow bin for some future projects. But yeah, no, I wasn't joking when I said about the plants and the overrun thing. There's just so many things that need a really good trimming in here to kind of get it back to pristine. But that being said, I do kind of appreciate the jungle look. I do like how everything is growing in so much. Now there's a couple of these other big plants. I do think I might get a bit of a magnet mount and put it on the back and see if I can attach a few of those to get some big floating leaves on this corner of the tank. And I do think that would look pretty cool. Now, one thing I will say is the moss has really taken over. Like, I think it looks wicked on my fake tree. However, it also tries to overgrow some of the plants and everything else. So it is definitely questionably invasive. You can see, this is poking out of the moss, but the moss is also growing over top of everything. So it is borderline invasive having all this moss, but it does give it a really cool natural look. One thing I do kind of love seeing is stuff like this, like these little ferns. I did not add this fern. This came in on the moss mix and it just kind of sprouted out. So that's one of the really cool things about doing this type of vivarium, and just how nature finds a way, and how, plants that I've never added to here just find a way and start growing, and I think that is really cool. So the heart of most of the humidity water system is in the base of the stand. And this one is my RODI bin. It gets auto topped off basically every 3 or so days. There's a float valve in there and it gets topped off when my reef tank refills its auto top off bin. So this has made it super easy. There is no refilling, there's no water, it's basically automated. The only thing honestly I really have to do is feed fruit flies. Now, if we look at the bottom, drilling the tank was hands down a game changer. Like, that is by far something I'd recommend to anyone doing a tank like this. If you have a reef tank, you'll know, like, drilling overflows super easy. Same with this. Any extra water saturation goes down there. That prevents your substrate from going funky and everything else. So, every month or two I just empty this out. Super duper easy. Now, the hardest part, honestly, is culturing some fruit flies. That was the part that I thought was going to be like awful and gross, and honestly it's pretty dang easy, and it is extremely cheap to culture your own. Now, to start a culture, I've been using this stuff called Rapashi Superfly. I put 3 scoops into a deli cup, add some hot water, stir it, let it sit for a couple hours, add a little bit of Excelsior, and dump in some flies. And it is extremely quick and easy. That takes me probably a couple minutes once every week, and that's about it for culturing flies. So it is dirt cheap. This was 110 bucks that I bought at the beginning of the year, and you can see it's still 3/4 full. That just goes to show how cheap it is to do it. It's super duper cheap. Now, one can only assume that the frogs are loving life and loving this enclosure and feel a natural home, because they have been making lots of babies. So the first round of eggs I had in here, they disappeared. I thought I'd let them try and hatch in the tank, and I don't know if they ate them or what happened, but the eggs disappeared over time. So a little while ago I decided to add a cocoa hut to the tank, and underneath the cocoa hut is just a little 3-inch little saucer pan. Thanks Thomas for that idea. And what that does is it gives it a place for the frogs to put their eggs that's removable. Now once there's eggs on it, I can remove it out, and basically I'll put it on a little tray, something like this, and let the eggs kind of develop. And once they turn into tadpoles, I would move them into a little container with some water and some leaf litter. Now the leaf litter is important for the tannins. Now this was from one of my second batch. So the first one's disappeared, the second one I decided to move it. Now it was my understanding that these guys did not eat the eggs, they were not cannibalistic like that. That being said, I had 3 in here and now there's only 1. Now the one that I had was like huge, he was like a monster compared to the others, where the others were tiny, so I'm pretty sure he ate them. So you can see how big that guy is, he's like a monster tadpole. Wouldn't be surprised if I start seeing legs on them soon. I have just been using tadpole food, and yeah, so far so good. It's obviously growing, and I think he's going to sprout legs and turn into a frog soon. And you think I would have learned my lesson, however, container number 2, I think I have about 5 tadpoles in here. So this was the second, I guess technically the 3rd round of finding eggs in the tank. And none of these guys are like King Kong relative to the rest like in my first batch. They're all roughly the same size, so I think I'm fairly safe. But given my lesson of the last one, you see like he's pretty small compared to say that guy. So I might actually separate them into their own deli cups just to make sure that no one gets eaten and we have more frog babies. So I've still been deciding if I'm gonna, build up an army of poison dart frogs or if I'm gonna, trade them to the pet store or what to do with them later, but we will see. But it is kind of a fun experiment trying to raise them and go through the whole life cycle of them turning into awesome, beautiful, little colorful frogs. Now, I know lots of people don't like mixing species in the same enclosure. I have seen lots of people do morning geckos with dart frogs, which I've been kind of half tempted to try. There's some really cool looking ones called neon day geckos, and I am tempted to try those with here, so I might potentially see if I can trade, once these guys my tadpoles turn to frogs, I might see if I can trade them to a buddy or trade them to an LFS, and we'll see if I can get some neon day geckos added to the mix. I think they'd be pretty cool. The only consideration for them is they do need some UVB/basking spot. So if I did, I'd potentially do a little shelf or something up higher, and then I would also have to drill a hole in the glass for UV or basking light. So that of course is the consideration that UV does not go through glass. So likely do kind of a hole or something in the back with a little ledge for basking and or UVB. Now another one I want to update. Someone was asking on one of my prior videos if I had this file, and I'm 99% certain I threw this on Thingiverse. If not, I will update it to my ReefDudes account on there. But these are my little vents that I made. It's for ventilation, super duper easy, 3D printed, glued to my own mesh. And that's worked very, very well for like a really sleek, removable way to keep the fruit flies and your creatures in and still provide good airflow. In the back of the cabinet, I did add just a piece of black construction paper, more or less because when I sat down here at the tank, I could see the white. And adding that into it just made the black, it just aesthetically was a bit nicer. I have debated adding it to these sides as well, but we'll see on that one. My little exhaust fan on the tank and up high are still going strong. That's been keeping the glass super duper clean. I hardly ever have humidity on there except for maybe like half an hour after misting. I might see a band along the top, but then that kind of disperses. So definitely a little tiny stealthy fan makes a huge difference because I don't want to stare at a steamy bathroom mirror. I want to see a very aesthetically pleasing, amazing little jungle in my office. So I do think airflow is very important. With the misters, I actually did have a lot of stuff building up into my reservoir below, and I was doing 20 seconds of misting. I think it was at 8 a.m., 12 or 8 p.m. and I did reduce that probably a week or two ago to about 15 seconds. So I shaved off about 5 seconds, and my humidity has been averaging about 75%, and it kind of goes between that 70 and 90 or 70 and 85 type of range. And so overall, I think that's been working pretty well for the dart frogs. Now I do kind of rate the happiness of the dart frogs based off them displaying natural behaviors like mating, which is always great to see. So for all my reefers out there, if you do want another little kind of side hobby that's pretty dang chill and pretty easy, but still has some cool kind of parallels to reefing, I definitely think the dart frogs is a really cool way to go. And yeah, we'll see. I might end up with some nano geckos here as well sometime next year. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this update on the poison dart frog jungle style vivarium. If you did, of course, hit that like button. If you have one of your own or have any questions on it, let me know in the comments below. And I will see you guys on a future update.